grab your cup of tea and welcome to Canna Brew. Hi, my name is Rhodes Pierre, and welcome to the Cannabis Cultural Association's Canna Brew. Thanks for joining us. Why do we do the show? We do this show to bring important medicine to the people who need it. We hope to discuss all things related to cannabis, from the industry to opportunities to employment, politics, and of course the actual materials, the edibles and the smokables. In this episode, we'll be looking at the future. What opportunities are available if the campaign to regulate marijuana like alcohol, or Yes on 4, passes? For that, we'll be talking to Will Luzier, former activist, hippie, and attorney general who's currently the campaign manager for the Yes on 4 campaign. Cheers. And remember to sip slowly. You want to burn. Let's hear a little bit about you and what got you involved in the whole Regulate on 4 campaign.
Okay. I went to college, or started college in the mid-'60s, 1967. I graduated from high school. And so it was a time of rapid societal change, particularly for young folks. And I quickly got involved as a student activist in the anti-war movement. And I also attended some meetings at the University of Buffalo, led by a guy named Mike Aldrich, who had organized a group called LEMAR, which stood for Legalize Marijuana. So that kind of got me interested in marijuana law reform. And then in 1970, probably because I was a student activist and a hippie, I got and there was a lot of police student activity in Buffalo at the time. I got arrested and charged with possession of less than a quarter of an ounce of marijuana, which in New York State at the time was a Class A misdemeanor. I could have served up to a year in jail. I don't know if you're old enough to remember what a film canister looks like, but
yes.
I had a film canister half full of marijuana, and the cop reached his hand in my pocket in order to get it out, so it was an illegal search. So as a result, the case was thrown out. But that continued to stoke my interest in marijuana law reform. I went to law school. I came here to Boston to do that, and then I sort of diverted my career a little bit into law and politics. I worked for 12 years as an assistant attorney general. I worked for 13 and a half years as a chief of staff and general counsel to 2 state senators, Stephen and Warren Tolman.
Okay.
And then for 6.5 years, I was the executive director of the Interagency Council on Substance Abuse and Prevention. Okay. Worked very closely with Lieutenant Governor Murray on a whole range of substance use issues. So when this opportunity came along, it offered me the chance to blend my experience in law and politics with my passion for marijuana law reform.
What kind of stoked you, getting you more involved into the issue? I understand you had a background in college, and you mentioned the fact that something, as far as the arrest for the ounce, and but again, what gave you the fire and passion to be like, hey, I got to look into this, or what's going on with this and stuff?
Well, certainly the whole history of prohibition and its roots in racism with Harry Anslinger, in the 30s. But Harry Anslinger was head of an organization that was charged with enforcing prohibition of alcohol.
Yes.
And so when prohibition of alcohol ended,
yes,
Harry Anslinger needed to preserve his job and preserve his organization. And so he began to demonize marijuana as something that was bad. It was Mexicans were bringing it across the border, and so just like Nixon did in the 70s, they couldn't demonize being Mexican, so they demonized having marijuana, and that allowed them to control the Mexican population. And I say that because there's a fast forward now from the mid-30s to the 70s. There's a famous quote from John Ehrlichman, who was one of Nixon's henchmen. And he said, in the 70s, we had 2 enemies, blacks and hippies. And he said, we knew we couldn't make it against the law to be black or to be against the war. So what we did was we made it against the law to have marijuana, and then we could arrest these people, break up their meetings, destroy their lives. And he said, did we know we were lying about those drugs? He said, of course we did. And so that led to the genesis of the Substance Control Act, which meant that marijuana was a Schedule I drug, and that means it's too dangerous to be used for anything, and it is classified the same as heroin.
And then obviously we know that to be not the case, obviously, these days, because a lot of the states have passed medical marijuana laws saying that, hey, there are some medicinal purposes to this particular cannabis plant.
There is some science that suggests that availability of marijuana decreases dependence on opioids. There's also a study that came out this year from a pain management journal that says that folks who use opioids for pain management that are prescribed for pain are able to reduce their dependence on those opioid prescriptions by using marijuana. And some people are even able to stop using opioids altogether. And so I think there is promising science that indicates that marijuana will be a gateway out of the opiate crisis.
Yeah, because I've heard that stated before by Dr. Uma. I believe she mentions that the fact that it's a gateway out of dependency, a gateway out of drug abuse and addiction, and that's another aspect of marijuana that again is not explored by the mainstream media.
On the ballot this year, November, California, Nevada, Arizona, Maine, and Massachusetts.
Yes.
If all of those pass, somewhere I recently read, 26% of the people who live in the United States will live in states that have legalized marijuana. And California is huge, and they're already polling at about 60%. Mm-hmm.
So as far as like once those laws do change, you're saying like that be the impetus for the federal government to actually get off its butt, follow along with the will of the people. The law puts a provision in saying that if you have been arrested for marijuana possession in the past, that is not going to impede you from getting or receiving employment or being part of the industry moving forward.
That's right.
Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. We thought it was important to make sure that folks were able to participate in the industry, even though they may have had a marijuana conviction, because, obviously, people that have experience with marijuana are going to be needed in the industry, and some of those people have arrests on their record. I might have had an arrest on my record if that case hadn't been thrown out. Mm-hmm. So you just want to make sure that those people have an opportunity to participate in the industry. And the other thing there are two other aspects of the initiative that are important to involving folks in the industry. There's a clause that mandates that the Cannabis Control Commission take into account communities that have been adversely affected by prohibition and work toward bringing those folks from those communities into the industry. Mm-hmm. And exactly how they do that is not outlined, but there was a group of Northeastern law students organized by Chanel Lindsay and Horace Small from the Union of Minority Neighborhoods, who put together a report on exactly how the Cannabis Control Commission might implement that regulation.
Wanted to also had a couple of questions in regards to what will that mean for the medicinal market? Like, if once it goes recreational and you have a medical marijuana card, like, does it affect you as far as like keeping your medical marijuana card?
No. In fact, the initiative says that specifically that the initiative will absolutely not affect in any way the medical marijuana program.
Okay.
So it does say that you can have a dual counter approach. So you can sell medical and adult use in the same facility. Sort of in a broader sort of market view, there are a couple of things that will happen with adult use marijuana that will benefit folks who need marijuana for medicine. So even though we passed medical marijuana by initiative in 2012, we're now in 2016, 4 years later, and we have 8 dispensaries open. There was supposed to be 35 dispensaries in the first year. And there are a lot of people who might need that medicine who, for whatever reason, can't get to a dispensary, or their doctor won't give them a certification to get a medical marijuana card. And there's a lot of people who don't want to go on the list. They might be undocumented immigrants. They might have a firearms ID card. They might be a veteran who's worried about losing their federal veterans benefits. They might be federal employees or federal retirees who are worried about losing their benefits. All of those people might need medicine, but they don't want to be on the DPH list. And so those people will be able to get their medicine just in consultation with their doctor without having the DPH middleman and all of the sort of paperwork and red tape that requires. And also, it's important to remember that, my understanding is that on the street now, an ounce of marijuana is about $300, $350, $400. In Colorado, it's about $200.
Okay.
And
that's the street value?
Wholesale, it might be about $100.
But is that the dispensary or the street? The street?
No, that's the retail price.
Okay.
And so we believe that because there will be a much more of a supply of marijuana, that the price will come down. And so that won't just be the price that'll come down for retail. It'll also come down for medical because there'll be more of a supply. Okay. And so people will be able to get their medicine less expensively.
The cost of like getting into the marijuana recreational business, you said that these people have already had like licenses already and stuff like. What's kind of like? I know we had discussed a little bit about like you said it was like $15,000 just to get
$15,000 for each kind of license.
Each kind of license, and then but again, like as a person that has like a cultivating, manufacturing, and what's the third retail license to actually sell it into your own store and stuff like that. That you're talking about $45,000 just to start off.
And honestly, that's probably not the most cost that one is going to face. You're going to have to have a facility that you pay rent on, that you have security about, that you have
so that's kind of
video security.
My point is like just the regulations that they've already established, just the licensing process. I don't think it's like it might be small to some people because it's not a multi-million or billion-dollar industry. But I don't think I don't personally know that have anyone that has $45,000 sitting around and still has money.
Do you want to get into this industry? You want me to write you a check now? I don't have that.
I was gonna say
I don't have that kind of money either.
$45,000 just to kind of like, hey, here you go to allow me to sell and grow stuff that naturally grows and stuff. But again, that was the idea of like it's not small potatoes. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, that's true. And you'll need to bring together a number of resources in order to start out in this business. And so I think that anybody who's thinking about that should begin to make those bring together those resources now.
Yeah. That's a really good idea. So if you guys are definitely interested in getting the medical marijuana, the recreational marijuana industry, definitely get in your application. But where do you have any idea what website or where to go to even start a process like that?
Well, there are firms, some of them fly-by-night firms. That.
But is there a government website where you can go in and say you want to?
No, and there won't be until after this passes. as an example, on Monday, Ayanna Presley, city councilor in Boston, is going to have a hearing on involving folks from communities of color in the marijuana industry. And I think it's her idea that they should have some city regulations that allow for that kind of participation in the industry. And I'm going to go, and I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to say, but what I'm going to say is we need to get past November 8th first. We need to get this passed because thinking about the opportunities for folks are not going to happen if the initiative doesn't pass. And someone said to me, and I know, and that the polls look positive, but one of the things that someone asked me a long time ago was, what do you worry most about in this process? And I said, I worry that people are going to get complacent, that they're not going to go out and work on this, that they're not going to do the work that needs to be done. They're not going to knock on the doors of their neighbors. They're not going to talk to their friends and family about the importance of regulating marijuana. And they're going to, they're not going to do the work that needs to get us to yes at the end of the day on November 8th. And so that's one of the reasons why I don't like to talk about November 9th. Because
you
we
want
got
to
to get
get
to November 8th first.
Understood. And again, it's like, knock on wood. We want to get this
Come on, great to see you too. Hey, thanks for all your help on the campaign. And we were just talking about that, so it's a good. Walked in at just the right time. So have a seat and talk to my friend Rhodes about.
Rhodes, good seeing you.
Nice to see you, Kamani. This is Kamani Jefferson, and he's actually working on the Yes on 4 tax and regulate campaign like alcohol. And tax and regulate
criminal
marijuana like
campaign
alcohol.
to tax and regulate
marijuana
like alcohol.
Like alcohol. So, Kamani, what has been your experience? Actually, how long have you been with the campaign?
I've been volunteering since July, August, and then I'd always, anytime I'd see an email about the next volunteer opportunity, I'd make sure to clear my schedule. I remember we went to a Willie Nelson concert at the Blue Pavilion, and we're handing out literature and telling people who were Massachusetts residents about what's going on. And Jared, who's the field director, saw my commitment, and he reached out to me last week, actually. It was the day before, so it's been about a week and a half. And he reached out to me and said, would you be interested in being an organizer, field organizer, to get people in the Cambridge area, Somerville area, to get them to start knocking on doors and getting them phone calls. So I've been unofficially about 2 months, but officially only a week and a half. So,
but as your experience of 2 months, a week and a half, how has it been the response by the public, the general public?
It's been good. Anytime people actually do open their door, it's been positive for the most part. Some people say I'm not interested in close the door or soliciting. Things of that nature, but people of the Cambridge, Somerville, I've been to Roxbury, I went to JP as well, and I've knocked on doors. It's been positive, so I do feel good going into the election day. But there's still, right before I even was here, I was reaching out to potential volunteers in all of Middlesex County and seeing if they can give up an hour or two to help out the campaign. So there's still work to do.
So do you have a personal story of why you became involved with the campaign, or what motivated you to be no, I gotta get involved, I gotta do something about this? That's my
man. How did I get involved
with the
campaign? Or what drew me in? Well, I am an activist, a blacktivist, I like to say. And I really saw the war on drugs affect people that look like me growing up, people who had records or people for minor possession. And I didn't understand because I have white friends and I have black friends, and my white friends never got arrested, for the most part. And then a lot of my black friends, a lot of my Latino friends did get arrested, and I started seeing that racial divide and who gets arrested, and not just outside of cannabis and just in general with how criminal justice happens in this country. And instead of getting really upset about it all the time, I decided I want to help do something about this failed war on drugs, this failed prohibition that's going on.
That being said, like the history of this country and stuff like that, and the relationship to black people and marijuana. What do you kind of see the future? I mean, again, he says not to predict the future, but we're still working on it.
Right.
But since you're doing a lot of hard work, like, what do you see your future like?
Me, my personal future.
Well, in the
I'm in the living room at my house, and my father and my brother are in the kitchen. Somebody comes up to me and they said, "Your dad's smoking marijuana in the kitchen." And so that sort of generated that conversation about how he remembered the jazz musicians, and rest his soul, my father was a good guy, although he was a Republican.
Well, Abraham Lincoln was a Republican.
Yeah.
I'm not even gonna go
And
into.
my dad was a Republican because my grandmother was a Republican, and I once asked my grandmother, "Why are you a Republican?" She said, "Abraham Lincoln was a Republican."
Yeah. No, and that's the thing. I mean, people try to make it look like it's right now. It's the name branding is a little tarnished because the Democrats and Republicans have kind of switched roles and stuff like that. But it comes again. I wish people would really like kind of study their history and the idea that this country was founded for religious freedom, away from the monarchy, and we're kind of going right back into that. But we call them presidents now and trying to treat them like royalty. But that's a story for another time. Let's.